Good evening. So, just a quick poll. So, why don't you just let me know while we get started? All right. So, let me just share the screen with you. Just give me a second. I'll just be sharing it, and then post that I can maybe turn off my video as well. All right. So, I'm just going to be ending the poll now. So let's see. So most of you are planning to do it in 2020-21. That's great to know. That means you are planning to take the GMAT in the next few months, hopefully, so that you are ready for the first round of MBA applications. Let me just go ahead and share the PPT that we have for the day. Excellent. So what is it that we are planning to do today? So we're going to be looking at how do we maximize our test day performance. So yesterday, those of you who were part of the session that we had with Manraj, I hope you found that useful because I think a lot of what he said for those who attended, the CrackVerbal students who attended, was around this fact of how you are able to do on the day of the GMAT is to a large extent. I'm just checking how many of you are already CrackVerbal students. So you can just let me know. So the whole idea behind the poll is just to kind of ensure that we are engaging, so that I get to know what you guys are looking at. So yeah, so I see majority seem to be CrackVerbal students. Some of you not CrackVerbal students, great, but good to know that. So again, I'm ending the poll over here. So majority of you are CrackVerbal students, good. That is a good base. Those of you are coming in new, whatever I'm going to tell you is not with regards to teaching the GMAT. That is not the agenda for what we have for you today. We're going to be talking about what to do on the day of the test. A little bit about myself. Why am I the person saying this? Well, my name is Arun. You can connect with me on LinkedIn and also write into me at my email address. So one of the things that I believe is GMAT is never, you have to look at it as a game. So think of it as a match that you're playing. Let's say you're playing a cricket match, right? You could be the best batsman on the nets. You could be the best bowler in the nets. You could be best fielder when it is practice session, but none of it matters unless and until you are able to really perform in those 3 hours, correct? So the 3 hours that you have for the GMAT, everything basically boils down to how do you keep your optimal level of performance on the day of the test. So that's really in a nutshell the whole idea, right? So how do I kind of maximize? And that's what I'm going to be talking about in today's session. Right. As always, if you're a CrackVerbal student, you know how the process works, the protocol. So make sure that you pick all panelists and attendees in case you have to kind of just. So why don't you just do this? Let me know. One more question I have, which is, have you guys already booked your GMAT dates? So anybody who's already booked your GMAT date? Or how many of you are in this process of figuring out when to book the GMAT date? So there are a few who have booked it. Some of you have it in a few days, and some of you may be in a process of figuring out when to book the GMAT date. So here is a very quick tip that I have for you. If you are not clear what GMAT date to book, I always recommend pick the date when you will book your GMAT date. See, you may not have enough idea when you are taking the GMAT, but at least you can tell yourself that maybe by, let's say, 1st September or 15th September, any date, it's very important for you to commit to a GMAT date, right? So you don't need to commit right now, but if you don't have a commitment in mind, and tell me if you agree with this, all things happen only when there is a deadline. In life, do you agree with this statement? Be it at work, be it personal, how many of you are people who feel that your brain starts working or you start prioritizing, correct, when your GMAT date is booked? So in case you don't have a date yet, my strong recommendation would be is pick a GMAT date. So book a GMAT date. Even if you don't know what that GMAT date is, pick a date to book your GMAT date. Say by 15th September, 100% I'll be able to tell what the GMAT date is, correct? So yeah, let's continue using the chat window, what you're doing right now, perfect. Let's right now not put questions, but there is a Q&A window. So by the time I'm done, I'm hopefully going to preempt many of the questions that you may have. So just hold on. I will let you know when I'm done. At that point, I'm going to be giving a good 10-15 minutes in the end for Q&A. So we'll make sure that in the Q&A, we will go through any questions you may have. Right? I will be giving you polls just to kind of assess certain things. Please participate in these polls. And once we are done, as I said, let's make sure that we kind of take the Q&A towards the end. And lastly, one question that I usually keep getting asked in the webinars is, would the recording be available? Yes, the recording would be available, but just stay till the end. I have something interesting to give you. I'll be giving you a PDF which will give you a checklist of all the things that you need to take care of on the day of the GMAT, right? So we have kind of trifurcated it into before the GMAT, during the GMAT, and after the GMAT, what are the things you need to take care of, right? So let's get to the agenda. So I'm going to be broadly splitting this topic into 4 areas, right? So the first thing a lot of students have as a question is, what section selection do I pick? Right? Obviously, there is another problem over here, which is if you are going to take the online test, you know there is a fixed section selection. If you take the test at the center, you obviously have the choice of 3 variations within the section. We will also be talking about how do you manage time. CrackVerbal students probably have heard this from me, because very important that even when you're practicing, always keep timing in mind. You can't miraculously start getting questions right in 2.5 minutes if you don't adhere to timing during practice. So I will also be giving you a pacing chart of sorts, which will help you kind of keep the momentum, right? So you know how you are tracking your progress or your speed. And we will also be discussing about how to best use the GMAT online or the physical whiteboard. So in case you're taking it at home, I will be giving you some tips on how to better utilize the resources. And finally, we will also be talking about how do we conserve the mental energy on the day of the test. What are the things that we need to take care of? And as I said, we will have a checklist. We will go through the checklist, right? So let's get started with the first thing, which is how do you decide the section selection order, right? So what are the things that we have? Well, if you are going to be taking the online test, you know that the section selection order is fixed. What is the order? The order is you're going to start with quant, then you're going to go to verbal. Let me just try to change the color of the pencil, maybe, yeah. So first you're going to do quant, then you are going to be doing verbal, then you are going to be doing integrated reasoning. There is no AWA in the online test, okay? And I'll tell you some internal details. See, AWA, according to me, is a very poor measure. And if you look at the percentile scores of AWA, you will realize why it is a poor measure, because it's kind of, if you have a template, and you are able to kind of just go through the template, if you are able to write with some examples with a standard structure, there is a very good chance that you will get at least a 4.5 or a 5. If you are struggling in AWA to get, let's say, a 3 or a 4, then you have a bigger problem, because a person struggling with AWA 3 or 4, GMAT verbal is going to be a completely different beast, right? It's a lot tougher. So if you are doing well in verbal, chances are AWA is not something you need to worry, which GMAT also has realized. Because over the years, even B schools, in my opinion, the only thing that they see is, has this guy really screwed up AWA? Correct? Has he scored like a 0 or a 1? In which case you have an unfair advantage, because you kind of did not even prepare for the section, you just kind of omitted it, right? So the expectation is that you score at least above a 4.5 if you take it at the center. But online test, don't worry, the lack of AWA score is not going to be a problem for you. I just wanted to make sure that I put it out there, that a lot of students have come and asked, Arun, I don't have an AWA score. Will my college reject my score? Nobody is going to reject your score, okay? They are just worried about your 3-digit GMAT score. And as long as that is high enough, as long as you get a good quant and verbal score, they don't necessarily worry too much. In fact, even for IR, my take would be, as long as you're scoring above 5, 6, any number, it doesn't really matter, correct? So above a 4.5 in AWA, above a 5 in IR is what I would recommend. But more importantly, the 3-digit score is going to be based on your quant and verbal preparation, correct? If you're taking it at the test center, then you have an option of starting it in one of 3 ways. This is what was the original, or I would say the traditional way. So you have to understand that section selection actually started only about a year or so ago. I don't remember exactly, but about a year or 1.5 years ago. Before that, for a long time, GMAT had only one set of sections. You had to start with IR, you had AWA, then you go to IR, then you go to quant, and verbal was the last section. Trust me, 1.5 years ago, when I used to teach reading comprehension, the challenge was very different, because the whole idea was, you already are spending close to 1 hour, your mental energy is getting sucked, okay? And you have not even answered a single question that is going to go towards your final 3-digit GMAT score, correct? So 1 hour, you're already consuming this, then you start off with quant and verbal. Would this option be viable for anyone? Would I recommend this option? I would recommend this option for people, and I've had some students who feel that they have a starting trouble. Does anyone have this problem? Like when you start off from like ground zero, right? It's very hard for you to see the first question, either a quant or a verbal section. You feel that your brain is not warmed up enough, correct? And you need a little bit of, kind of solving to get your brain going. So if you feel that you have the mental energy to actually last the whole thing, and you want something to get you over the initial inertia, my suggestion would be for you to take the option 1, correct? So, but I would still say be very careful of considering option 1, because if you are going to consider option 1, you have almost 1 hour of the test, and you are not even looking at a single quantum verbal option, okay? What is most popular is either option 2 or option 3. Correct? So now I'm going to give you a little bit of variations to see what it is. The first thing that I would recommend is that you take a couple of full-length tests. In case you have not taken, some of you have the GMAT in the next few days. I hope you have already made the decision, but in case you have not made the decision, I would actually give a couple of tests starting with verbal and a couple of tests starting with quant. And I want to just make one point clear here, that don't let your test scores dictate your preference. See, it may happen that you may start with quant, but you liked that thing, but on that particular test, something went wrong, your brain was not working 100%, you ended up with 670, correct? Or in some other test, you saw some repeats and you felt you got lucky, and you started with verbal and you ended up with 710. Right? So though the data could say that, okay, you have to start with verbal, not with quant, I would suggest that you need to use your judgment. You need to use your interpretation of how, the data works. You are the best person to tell what is going on over here, correct? So I'll tell you what happens with verbal. So usually people who are very strong in quant, right? I'm just saying that if you are very strong in quant, I have seen people picking this because they feel they want the maximum mental energy when they are starting with verbal. So verbal is like fresh, right? You are coming into the test and you have your 100% attention focused, and you know that your quant is strong enough that even when it comes as a second section, you know that even with a depleted mental energy, you are able to solve it. I'm going to give you now another school of thought, those who pick quant first and then go through it. So again, I've had students come, and there are two varieties of students over here. The first variety of students, they are people who are actually strong in quant. Okay, they are actually very good in quant. And what I've heard from students is they say, Arun, I want to start with quant, kind of nail quant, make sure I have the confidence, right? So that I step into verbal, with a more peace of mind, right? So that's one this thing. The second is, as I said, people who feel that quant is their weak section and that they need to have their 100% attention or 100% focus on the first section, in which case quant could be a good option for you to start with because you are still fresh and you are trying to solve those questions, and then move on to verbal. So both of these options, but again, as I said, make sure that you practice out at least a few tests to get a hang of it, right? So my personal preference, if you ask me, there is nothing like a personal preference, but I would suggest, usually, and again, I'm saying this with a huge pinch of salt. So usually what happens is, I have noticed that students, when they start off, especially Indian students, they tend to prefer option 2. I'm just telling you the preference, right? So I've had a lot of people coming with this. This is option 2 and this serves as option 3. But this is again statistics, right? I'm just telling you usually what I've seen with students, but you are the best judge to think what you need to start with, okay? Let's get to the second point, which is how do you manage time on the GMAT day, right? This is also an important consideration that you need to have even before you get started. So how do I manage the time? So first thing you need to realize is that the test approximately is about 3 to 3.5 hours, correct? How many of you feel that it is very hard for me to manage 3 hours, or forget 3 hours, a particular section is 1 hour? Do you think it is easy for you to manage 1 hour if I give you 36 questions, right? And if I say, oh, you have 1 hour, correct? Would you be able to manage 1 hour? Perhaps not, correct? Because in our mind, we don't know, right? Like, would I be able to average 2 minutes per question such a way that I get 30 questions and then 60 minutes, or 36 questions in 65 minutes? Perhaps not, correct? So a better way to look for it is to have a pacing chart. So what I recommend as a pacing chart is you should be solving approximately 9 questions in 15 minutes. So what you can also do during practice is you can create these small question sets, and you don't need to create it, right? You can just go, if you're doing the online version of the OG or online version of, let's say this, you can actually select using the tool. If you're using a book also, it's no problem. You can just kind of go through the pages. So what you can do is you can pick, let's say, 2-3 questions of SC, correct? Maybe 2 questions of CR, right? And maybe you can throw in one passage with about 3 to 4 questions, correct? So what you have is, a pack of 9 questions with which has one passage for you, correct? And this you should be doing in approximately 15 minutes. Now, as you know, on the day of the GMAT, the timer is a countdown timer, correct? It's not a count up timer. So the way I would look at it is, when I have 65 minutes, correct, I'm basically left with all the questions, right? So that means I have all the 36 questions in front of me. But at the end of 15 minutes, I should technically be like, I have 36 questions left. So here I'm literally on question number 1, correct? So I'm on question number 1. I should have done 9 questions, which means I should be on question number 10, correct? So I should have done 9. Similarly, if I have 35 minutes left, correct, I should be on 18 plus 1, question number 19. If I have 20 minutes left, which is where, the last thing, I should be on question number 27, right? Now, if you notice, I basically have given you a buffer of 5 minutes because this whole maths of 15 minutes per 9 questions means you have a 5 minute buffer that you're left with. How do you utilize this 5 minutes buffer? Where do you think you should utilize this buffer? Should you utilize it at the first part of the test, or do you think you should keep it for the end? What do you think? Let me know in the chat window. Where should I use this 5 minute buffer? Let me know in the chat. Starting, initial part, last part. Okay. Okay. So, correct. I see a, by the way, guys, can you please pick all panelists and attendees while responding? So there is a blue drop down. Just go to the blue drop down in the chat and just pick. Yeah. So see, here is where I have a slightly different opinion over here. And I'll tell you why my opinion is so. When we start the GMAT, right? So assume that I'm going to just, I'll come back to this. So if you look at the GMAT test, right, you are going to be starting at a 550, correct? You are starting it at a 550, and as you keep getting questions right, you are going to keep hitting a higher number, right? So maybe you get a few questions right, you go to 600, go to 650, go to 700, 750, and go on. So if you ask me, if you look at the ESR score, there are 4 quartiles, right? 4, like 1/4, what second, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. I would say give each question the time that it deserves. Okay, so give each question the time that it deserves. The idea is not to utilize the buffer all towards the beginning, because that would be suicidal. Because what you have to understand is that the initial part of the test, you are still going to be getting relatively easier questions, correct? But at the same time, would it be a wise decision for you to keep these 5 minutes all the way till the end? And let us say that you did not need those 5 minutes. It would be, kind of, for the lack of a better word, it would be stupid for you to solve the questions, with 5 minutes to spare, correct? So I would say, as someone actually said that, right, in the chat window, someone, you use it for the questions that you think are going to take that extra time. Correct? So there will be a bold-faced question somewhere. If you are going to get to a 700 plus, somewhere there will be a tough question. Correct? There could be a completely underlined sentence correction questions with the entire sentence underlined, multiple modifiers. You can't even use a vertical scan. Use it for that question. Or use it for a tough RC passage where the question says, which of the following predictive statements would the author most likely agree with, except? This is a question that is going to take more time, correct? I don't think you would be able to solve that in 90 seconds or 108 seconds, which is what we have. So we have, just to give you a sense, we have 108 seconds per question, correct? So the idea is to, use it for things that you think deserve that extra time, but try to spread this buffer, right? While you are practicing, okay, what I would do is I would try to pick this as my pacing chart. Now, many of you would feel that, Arun, in 15 minutes, I'm not able to solve 9 questions, right? Maybe you are able to solve only 7 questions. That is perfectly okay. What it also means is during the test, you start guessing, correct? So what you could also do is, one is the educated guess, right? This is again, for those who are CrackVerbal students know that we talk about 2 types of guessing. One could be a blind guess. Correct? What is a blind guess? A blind guess is a guess where I don't even look at the question, right? The moment I see that out of a passage of, let's say, 3 or 4 questions, maybe your approach is, I am going to walk into this passage with a mindset that any question that is going to be a time sink. Time sink is a question that among the 3 or 4 will take more time, typically inference questions. You could walk into the strategy to say, I'm going to make a blind guess. Perfectly okay, by the way. Right? What is important is you know which are the questions for which you are going to do a blind guess. Can you tell me what are some of the scenarios that you want to make a blind guess? I just want to think, do you have any ideas of when you could make? I gave you one in RC. Is there anything else where you could make a blind guess? I'll give you a couple of more scenarios. You know what a blind guess is, right? Okay, so fully underlined sentence, you start reading it, you are not able to understand what the sentence is saying. Okay, you go back and you read it again, correct? And you realize that all the 5 answer options are structured differently, which means the only way for you to solve this is for you to know the meaning and for you to know how the sentence is constructed. And looking at it itself, you have no idea what the sentence is saying, correct? Is a good example. One more example, someone has mentioned about CR, correct? You took 30 seconds to read the stimulus. Reading the stimulus itself, you realize that it's dense like hell, correct? The moment you realize that, what you do, you tell yourself, look, it's pointless for me to get into the answer options, so let me guess and move on, correct? So that would be my recommendation of the pacing chart for verbal. For quant, the equation is a lot easier, correct? Just one point on this, which is if you are not able to get the gist for RC, you still have to attempt that RC passage. See, if you end up guessing an entire RC passage, you are really going to guess on what? 3 or 4 questions, correct? Guessing on 3 to 4 questions, that too sequentially, correct? The way the GMAT algorithm works is it penalizes you when you make sequential errors, correct? So the last thing that you want is, for you to guess the entire RC passage. So that is not a strategy that I would advocate at any point, okay? Now, coming to quant, right? So yesterday, by the way, those of you who attended probably remember Manraj saying this. So Manraj got a 760 with a Q50, right? And a V42. But he said something very interesting. He said that when I had the last 11 questions and there were about 8 minutes remaining, correct? I just want to tell you that, look, it is possible that he got majority of the questions right. So what happened perhaps at this level is he had already set himself for a very high score, right? He was able to salvage. Maybe he made a mistake or two, but it's okay. But he was able to use his presence of mind and he was able to come through the scenario, right? So that I think should serve as an inspiration for others. But the way I would look at it is the thumb rule is very simple. You just need to multiply it by 2, correct? So whatever question number that you are on, right? Very simple. What you can do is you have 31 questions and you have 62 minutes, correct? So what you can do is you can just keep a couple of markers for you. The way I would look at this is I would pick the marker at question number 10, question number 20. So I feel if you are able to manage quant in this, right, in this 2 ranges, right? This is the main 3 ranges that you need to worry about, correct? So what I would do is I would say approximately 20 minutes should have gone here, approximately 40 minutes have gone here. Here it doesn't make sense to say, but yeah, 60 minutes should have gone. So what you could do is just pick these 2 numbers, right? Remember I said it's a countdown timer. So what it means is when you are approximately 42 minutes left, when you have 42 minutes left, you should be on question number 10. And when you have 22 minutes left, you should be on question number 20, correct? Sorry, yeah. Okay, so that's really the way I would try to play this, correct? I mean, it's probably very simple, but on the GMAT, when you get, if you're taking it at home, you could use the virtual, board to write it down. If you are using the physical board, you could also use the physical board to write it down. If you're taking it at the test center, make sure that on your scratch pad, before you get started, put these 2 numbers that, with 42 minutes left, I should be on question number 10, and with 22 minutes left, I should be on question number 20. So I feel managing your time, over here is all that you have in your control, correct? So that's the way I would look at it, right? So with regards to AW and IR, as I told you, there is really nothing much, but please make sure that you practice with template, right? The usual structure that I give for AWA is 5, 20, 5, So what is 525? 5 minutes for you putting your thoughts on paper. Please take time, whether it is 2 minutes, 3 minutes, not full 5 minutes, I'm okay. But up to 5 minutes you can take to strategize your thoughts, put it on paper, don't rush into writing, don't rush into typing. Okay, so make sure you write down the points, since AW is anyways at the test center, not at home. So you'll be given the scratch pad. So on the scratch pad, you can make your points. Try to remember the template and try to see while typing, right? You cannot put the template. Start writing your points. Please ensure that you end it with at least 5 minutes to go. The reason being, you want to proofread, correct? Very important that you spend the last 5 minutes proofreading, ensuring that you are, kind of, happy with whatever you are reading. Last thing you want is type something in a hurry and you end up having simple typos. You have, simple, errors that you could have avoided. What is my strategy that we advise for IR is don't even try attempting 12 questions. I know it sounds odd, but for you, you need to basically get about 5 questions right, correct? That's the whole idea, that 4 of them are experimental, but still out of 8, you get about 5, which means you can give an honest attempt to maybe 6, 7 questions or 8 questions. So you can go in with the strategy of guessing at least 2 to 3 questions. I have hardly had students who have said, Arun, in 30 minutes, I was able to crack all 12 questions, right? So my suggestion, try to see if you have been practicing on IR, what are the topics that you want to guess on? Let me give an example, right? So do you think multi-source is a good question type for you to guess? Pros and cons, let's discuss. 5-mark short notes. Multi-source, what is the pros, what are the cons? Let me know in the chat window. What is the advantage? Very lengthy content. Law, it's very time consuming, right? It can, but what is the flip side? The flip side is you have like 3 questions with you, correct? So that becomes a little bit of a risk, right? So the idea is that don't blind guess. This is my advice to you. Don't blindly guess. Please spend at least 1 minute, because you're guessing for 3 questions, right? So maybe spend about a minute. Try to see if you are able to understand, and don't get rushed into the time thing, right? Just think with a cool mind. By the way, in IR, do you realize that timing plays a lot more on your head than even quant? Have you noticed that, especially in multi-source and all that? Because it's easy for you to suck like almost, 5, 6 questions. And yeah, that is the other thing, right? Like you have got everything, but if one particular question you get wrong, even if the other 2 values you have filled is correct, you end up getting penalized. That's the other thing, right? So that's a thing that you need to take. It's a educated risk. Have people taken that risk of guessing multi-source? The answer is yes. But I'm just saying, just because I'm telling, don't blindly guess it. Give it that 1 minute that it deserves before you start guessing, right? And individual questions, so I think you are the best judge, because I think within 30 seconds, you will get a sense of whether this question is doable or not, right? But again, if you're good in quant, and this is basically data interpretation. Coming to the next thing, how do you prepare to use the GMAT online or the physical whiteboard? So here is a question for you. I just want to check so that I can invest time accordingly. How many of you are even planning to take the GMAT online exam? So everything depends on this, because that's one thing that I've heard from a lot of students where, we have heard a lot of horror stories about, things not going too well in the exam center. So just to give you a sense, what will happen is you can book the date. All that details is on mba.com. I'm not going to give you the theoretical, details. You can find it out, how to book the date and all that. One thing about the GMAT online test is before you start, you need to show photographs of the room, and the proctor basically will assess whether there is any scope for cheating, correct? See, I kind of think that MBA.com, like GMAT as an organization, you have to cut some slack, right? I mean, think about it, right? So many people taking 250,000 people take the test over the, over 1 year. So I think the intention with which they started the online GMAT was correct. I think it is something that they should continue doing. The two major problems that you might have heard is, the first thing is, if there is a technical issue, the proctor was not knowledgeable. People, if you go online, I think most of you have gone to GMAT Club, read debriefs. In fact, on CrackVerbal website also, we had a student who had taken the GMAT online. So we heard good stories also. We heard stories where students said the proctor was helpful, and there were also other stories where they said this proctor himself didn't know. Like, I would assume that he would know at least basic questions, but when I was asking, he was not able to answer. You can keep a glass of water, clear glass of water. So it has to be clear, liquid. I hope you have only water. Please don't have anything else to consume, vodka, gin, any clear liquid. But that's really the only thing that you can keep. The other thing with GMAT online is the fact that you had a virtual board. I think virtual board was that thing. In fact, when they started it, right, I remember having conversations with them, and as a test prep instructor, one of the things that I told them is, do you know what is type 1 thinking, type 2 thinking? Have you heard of these expressions? Type 1 and type 2 thinking. There is a book called Thinking Fast and Slow. If you actually anyone read that book. So basically what happens is, the brain, the way it works. So let me do this. Let me give you a question. Please don't use a paper and a pen. Okay. Don't use a paper and a pen, and tell me the answer, okay, in the chat window. All right. So I'm going to give you the question. The question is that there is a hammer and a nail. So there is a hammer and a nail that I buy for $1.10. Okay. The hammer costs $1 more than the nail. What is the cost of the nail? I will repeat the question. The hammer and the nail together cost $1.10. The hammer costs $1 more than the nail. What is the cost of the nail? Go ahead, quickly tell me. And by the way, guys, please pick all panelists and attendees. 10 cents. Okay. Some of you saying 5 cents. Some of you say can't say no. I can definitely say. Right. See, if you have heard this question earlier, you may know this, but the answer to this question is 5 cents. Correct? But how many of you who are saying 5 cents now, right, can imagine yourself picking an answer choice which says 10 cents? Those of you who have picked 10 cents are probably now thinking, Arey, how is it 10 cents? I'll tell you. So the answer is, I told you that a hammer and a nail together cost $1.10, right? Which means if the hammer costs $1 more than the nail, right? The nail cannot be 10 cents, because then the hammer will cost $1.10, and both of them put together will be $1.20, correct? So the answer to this is, now why I was giving this as an example is because try solving this question with a paper and a pen. Okay, and try solving this question mentally. Okay, do you guys want one more quant question? What do you say? Okay, one quant question. Okay, let me give you a quant question. Okay, so there are 3 people who decide to go camping. Okay, let me give you another question. Okay, let me give you another question. So let us say that there is a woman who comes to a shop. Okay, and basically, so the woman comes and she comes to a toy shop. Okay. Now when she comes to the toy shop, she essentially buys a toy for 200 rupees. Okay. So let me just make it dollars. So $200, right? Or whatever denomination. I think $200 looks a little weird. So let me give you 200 rupees only. So she buys something for 200 rupees. But she doesn't have change. So what she does is she gives a 1,000 rupee note. All right. The shopkeeper does not have change for 1,000. So what he goes to the neighboring shopkeeper, right? So this is the neighboring shop, and he asks for change for 1,000 rupees. and the neighboring shopkeeper gives this guy 1,000 rupees. This guy gives it to the woman, correct? And the extra change for 800. She goes back, okay? The next day, the neighboring shopkeeper comes and he says, hey, the note that you gave was a fake note. So basically the lady cheated and she gave a counterfeit note. So this guy has no option but to pay 1,000 rupees to the neighboring shopkeeper. The question is, what is the total loss incurred by our shopkeeper? See, I already have different numbers: 1,200, 1,200, 800, 1,400, 1,200. 1,200, 7,800, okay. Okay. 1,200 plus 1,400 basically. Okay. 2,000. All right. No, we are not looking at profit, okay, Abhinav. Let's not look at profit, just looking at what is the total loss. Now, by the way, before I give the answer, do you guys realize the variation that you guys had? Now tell me, are you all doing it mentally? Yes or no? Let me know in the chat window. Do you realize doing it mentally is very hard? That's exactly what I want to say, that if I solve this, using a paper and a pen, my ability to kind of, structure my thought process is going to be a lot easier. The problem with online GMAT is that it is very hard for me to structure it. So let me give you the answer. So tell me, what is the total loss incurred by the shopkeeper? Can you tell me how much did the shopkeeper pay out of his pocket to this lady? How much exited the system? How much exited, which means she is the person who's the beneficiary. She got 800 rupees. She got 800 rupees. No, but she also got 200 rupee toy. So what is the total money that exited the system? 1,000 rupees. Now this shopkeeper, though obviously, bichara, he did not have any profit or loss. Correct? No, but see, this is the fake note. See, this was a decoy. GMAT will keep a decoy for you. If I did not give you this decoy, if I were to tell you that the next day he discovered that it was a fake note, still the loss would be the same. No. By giving you this extra level of giving it to the neighbor and getting back, I'm trying to confuse you. But eventually, the total loss cannot be more than 1,000 because that was the beneficiary got 1,000 rupees. Your loss also has to be 1,000. Okay, so I want you to think about it, but the idea is not to teach you maths today, but just wanted to tell you that are all of you on the same page that it's very important for you to commit, especially in quant, on paper and pen? Yes or no? And online with the physical whiteboard, correct? So I'm just going to pick a board that is not really the exact board, but something of this sort, right? So I have a board of sorts. So what I could do is I have let's say I'm just going to be out. I just dropped something, but I have a duster, right? So I'm going to be using a whiteboard like this. So the way I will be holding this whiteboard is I'm going to be holding it, perhaps keep it next to the place where I'm taking the test, correct? And it's important for you to write down certain things on the physical board. But you also know that there is a whiteboard that is also provided to you, correct? So if you are taking it online, please practice using the physical board and the whiteboard. I will tell you some things that you can use the physical board for, some things for which you can use the virtual board for. The physical board can be used for one. So for one thing that I usually tell is you should be having all the answer options written down vertically, correct? Like for example, I've just written down A, B, C, D, E, correct? So make sure that you write down, and while you are solving, correct, for a particular question, what you're doing is you don't want to remember whether you kept a particular question or not, right? So when you're solving it, there are going to be two options. Either you hold to a particular answer option or you eliminate it, correct? One of these two. So what you can do when you've written down something vertically is you can just keep scratching out the wrong answer choices. Yeah, so I just shared this result to show you that the number of people planning to take it. I have not stopped the poll, so I just wanted to say so. Yeah, so about 30% of you are looking at taking the GMAT online. 53% are this. There are a few of you who are still undecided. But whatever the case be, if you are doing online, make sure that you write A, B, C, D, E vertically. Do not trust your memory. Especially sentence correction, right? Especially sentence corrections. Yeah, your brain will go back and see, even if you spend a quick 5 seconds. Arey, did I eliminate B? How many of you have done that? Like you go back to an answer choice you have eliminated and think, Arey, did I eliminate B? And what happens at that point? You start seeing something else in B. Acha, this is the parallelism also is wrong. But really, that is time that you are wasting because you have already eliminated the answer option, right? So that's one thing. The thing with the virtual board is that there are two cases. So I'm just giving you a sense of what are the various things that you would get on the virtual board. But the thing that I would probably look at is I would use it for two things. I'll tell you where I can use it. So you know that I can place this virtual board on my screen, right? On my GMAT screen when I'm taking it. This could be a great way for you to write or type your RC passages, right? So we teach the mapping. So all of you are conversant with mapping. In CrackVerbal, we have a particular way to do it. So make sure that you're using mapping. Mapping, I think virtual whiteboard works very well because what happens is the passage is in front of you. So visually, you don't need to keep going back to your whiteboard and keep looking at the screen. You can keep typing and, while you're reading the passage. The second thing is there are a lot of mathematical functions, especially for problems on geometry. I would suggest that you use these diagrams, especially to draw circles or triangles. All of this is possible with the tools. So make sure that you spend. In any which case, I would say spend at least 15 days practicing with both the virtual whiteboard and the physical whiteboard. Please don't walk into the test thinking that you'll hack your way through and you'll figure out how to use it. Virtual whiteboard, very important. The problem here also is you are allowed to use only a mouse. Are all of you aware of that? Like now, how am I writing? I'm using it's an iPad, right? So I'm using the iPad pencil. You don't have all these kind of input devices. So you only have a mouse, correct? And if you have a trackpad, it's going to be even more trickier. So maybe you want to keep a mouse, an external mouse connected in case you want to take it, right? So that is as far as the online test and using the whiteboard and the physical board is concerned. But let me get to the point on how do you manage your mental energy? What is mental energy? CrackVerbal students know what is mental energy, but I still want to know what is mental energy. You can let me know in the chat window. Yeah, I've already mentioned that Sai, it will be available to you. Mental strength, yes, your ability to focus on a particular thing, your ability to concentrate. How many of you, by the way, guys, just a gentle request to all of you, it doesn't take a lot to understand this instruction, but please pick all panelists and attendees so that, people can see what you're typing. So I define mental energy as, you remember, like when you have a mobile phone, right? You charge it the whole day. The next day morning, you see 100% in the morning, right? You are like, 100%, I don't need to worry, correct? And by about 11 o'clock, it becomes 80%, you don't even bother, right? Then it becomes, 50%, you don't bother. Then it goes to 30. By the time it's like 5:36 when it's raining outside, and back in the day when we used to book Uber and Ola and we really needed the mobile battery juice, you realize that it became critically low, correct? Or have you ever had a colleague come to you at 7 p.m. At the end of a work day and ask you, hey, you have a quick 5 minutes? Have you ever had someone come up to you and ask you this, quick 5 minutes? And have you ever felt mentally so depleted that you say, boss, it is not a question of 5 minutes. I can give you 15 minutes also. But right now my brain is dead. Like I can't process what you're going to be saying. Correct? So this is something called as decision fatigue. In fact, you can Google for this term, decision fatigue. It's a pet word for a lot of self-help books where they talk about essentialism. They talk about how you should maintain your mojo, your top 3 of the day, blah, blah, blah. But that is exactly what we are trying to avoid on the GMAT. You have to keep your brain in pristine condition. You have to give your brain as much energy as possible. How do we do that? We do that by looking at 3 things. We look at what you should be doing before your GMAT, what you should be doing during the test, and what you should be doing after your GMAT. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you a couple of things that I want to make sure that all of you have thought. Again, I'll be giving you a PDF, a checklist of sort that you can go through. First things first, do all of you have a passport? Let me know in the chat window. All of you have a passport? Yes. Okay. Anybody who doesn't have a passport, please get a passport. Aadhaar, driver's license, nothing is going to work. Passport works. You'll be surprised. There are so many students who actually, correct Akshay, right? So a lot of students are not aware of it. So make sure you have your passport. Question number 2. Is your GMAT MBA registration the same name, like your first name, last name? Is that the same as it is on your passport? Right? If your name is Ankit S. Shah, and if your passport says Ankit Suresh Shah with your father's name included, your GMAT also has to be the same name, right? Last thing that you want is you want to stress. By the way, just wanted to also tell you that I have heard at least 1 or 2 cases where the proctors in the GMAT center were very helpful. They actually helped the student go online, make edits to mba.com all before the test started, correct? They helped them, do that. But last thing you want is stress, correct? So why take that stress? Just do that simple check. If you are, by the way, all of what I'm going to tell is also based on the fact that you're taking it as a test center. So if you are taking it as a test center, have you calculated how long it will take for you to get there? How will you get there? Are you going to, is someone going to drop you? Are you going to take some kind of a public transport? Hopefully not in today's time, but at least like maybe a cab, right? If you are going to drive yourself, do you know where you're going to find parking? Correct? I have had some students do it. I'm not recommending, but they go on a reconnaissance mission. So a reconnaissance mission is basically, if you're driving, then just drive to that test center, see where it is, just to get to a sense. But that's one thing that I would advise. Make sure you figure out what is your transportation. In fact, if you're going to be taking the test, either it's a morning, afternoon, or evening test. I'm broadly categorizing the time limits as morning, afternoon, and evening. Make sure that you pick a slot where, how many of you are morning people? Like you work very well in mornings, like you naturally wake up at 5:30. I've seen a lot of people in Chennai, right, who are like these early morning people. Early morning people, guys, please take the GMAT in the morning slot, because you guys will not perform optimally if you take it later in the day, correct? But at the same time, how many of you are people who feel that, Arun, I don't get a single intelligent thought before 10 a.m. or before I have my second cup of coffee? Anybody in that category? Okay. If you are in that category, try to take it slightly later in the day. This is called the circadian system. This is how your body functions. By the way, I'm not an early morning, I'm not a late evening person. I'm like, one of those guys who can perform well. If the test is at 11:30, I think that's a good time for me to perform, or anything after 10 is fine for me, correct? So you need to pick what time works well for you. Very important that you start sleeping at the same time and you wake up at a similar time, okay? At least a week or 2 weeks before the test, correct? So very important that you do that, practice that for at least a couple of weeks before. For example, now with COVID and everything, do you feel that you are sleeping later into the night? Anybody feels that earlier used to sleep by 11:30, now it is kind of extending till 1, 2. Netflix is also keeping us occupied, no? Have you ever wondered why the watch next episode is there only for 5 seconds? Why is it only 5 seconds? Because, see, it is harder for you to decide not to watch it, correct? It is easier for you to kind of continue and say, Acha, this is ended in a very interesting way. Let me look at the next episode. But make sure you start sleeping and waking at the same time. So I'll tell you one problem that, happens. So let us say that I'm just giving you a sample scenario. Let us say that your test is at what time do you want? Morning. Give me a time in the morning slot. 10 a.m. Yeah, 9 a.m. So there is a 9 a.m. slot, right? So let me take the 9 a.m. slot, right? So if you are going to take the test at 9 a.m., what time should you leave the house? I don't think there is for the physical center, I don't think there is anything before 9, but you need to check, is there 8 o'clock? Okay, so it could be 8. So let's pick 8 a.m., correct? So let's start off with the 8 a.m. test. What time do you need to leave your house? If this is your test time, what time do you leave your house? What time would you leave your house? 6:30 you leave. 6:30 is too early, man. I would say I don't think the reporting time is 1 hour before. I think you can reach somewhere around 8 a.m. So you can, let's say, leave at 7:30 a.m. Which means when are you going to have breakfast? You will have breakfast before you leave, right? So let us say you have breakfast at 7 a.m. So in that case, all bets are off. You see, if you have a 3-hour journey, I'm talking about if you are in the same city as the GMAT test center, chances are it will take about 30 minutes in morning, right? Again, I'm just giving an example, right? You can suit it to your convenience. 6:30 a.m. you wake up, correct? Now, tell me what will happen is waking up at 6:30 a.m. hard on the day of the test? Is waking up at 6:30 a.m. hard? Is it? I will tell you, correct. The problem is not waking up at 6:30, correct? The problem is sleeping the night before at 10:30. Correct? So what will happen is 6:30 you keep the alarm. Have you ever caught a flight where you kept an alarm and you woke like a minute before the flight? You have this mental alarm, right? You just keep telling yourself 6:30, you will wake up at 6:15, correct? So don't worry about waking up. But think about it, 10:30 p.m. you are supposed to sleep. Now, let's say you are living with family or friends and you go into your room, you tell them, hey, don't disturb me. Tomorrow is my GMAT. 10:15 you go, drink haldi doodh or whatever that puts you to sleep, right? You close your eyes, right? Tomorrow is your day of the GMAT, 10:30 p.m. Lights are off. Close your eyes. What do you think you're going to see? Sweet dreams or nightmares about the test? Right? So I've had a lot of people who have a certain anxiety, right? It's just natural, right? You're going to have this, it's not that you're thinking about the test, but it is almost like if you try not to think about the test, the more you start thinking about it, correct? Like the reverse psychology works. No, I will not think about GMAT. More and more you start thinking about GMAT. And what happens after you are like tossing and turning in bed, and then you look at the watch, suddenly you're like 11, man, I'm going to get less than ideal sleep, correct? And we cannot get into that stress. So my take is your sleep, at least 8 hours of good quality sleep. I cannot emphasize less. It's very good that Manraj came yesterday and he spoke the same thing about having sleep, right? Make sure you have breakfast that is relatively light. Have breakfast that you would normally eat on any other day. Please do not experiment anything on the day of the GMAT, right? I have seen weird things happening because people think that today is the day of the GMAT, so I have to have some kind of a superfood, right? So they bring all these weird things and eat. Please, you eat whatever, poha, idli, whatever you want to eat, you can eat. But I also want you to remember that if you're going to be reporting at 8 a.m., by the time you're done with quant and verbal and this thing, it is going to be, let's say, by the time you have the break, it could be 9:30, correct? 10, which means you are going to be hungry, which also means that make sure that you plan something that you can take to the test center, something that you can easily consume. One thing about the test center that I want to tell you, anybody who's taken the test would know the experience. So you go there. Right now, they have made it paperless, so you don't need to sign. I think the NDA also is electronically signed or something. I just need to verify. But overall, they give you a locker. You go, keep your stuff in the locker. Here is a weird rule, okay? It's a really weird rule. I have no idea why they have this rule, but one rule is you cannot take OG to the test center. Do you know that rule? You can actually be barred from taking the test if they are. I'm like, who was the guy who wrote this rule? First of all, correct? It's such a weird rule here. The guy is having OG. How does it impact his test? None of the questions are going to come in any case. But here is the other funny part, right? Here's the funny part. Why would you take OG to the test center? Right? It's not like before the test you are like revising from OG last minute, trying to memorize something, right? So pointless. Just take some light food. I think something that you are eating, something that is easily consumable. Please, again, I'm going to say this, don't eat or drink something that you don't do. For example, one thing that I've seen is a lot of people talk about having Red Bull. Have you heard of this? Taking Red Bull, consuming Red Bull for GMAT, right? So, see, again, you have to understand, if you don't drink Red Bull, I've had students who have actually got Red Bull from the store one day before, correct? And they have kept it in the fridge, saying, I'm going to drink Red Bull. And they have never had Red Bull. The first time they are drinking it is on the day of the test, correct? See, what it could do is, I don't know if you have had it, but it can make you a little edgy, right? So, if you don't know how you're going to react to that food, please don't have that, correct? If you are someone who has any kind of medical requirement, so I sometimes get headaches, especially when I'm a little dehydrated. I need to have a lot more water than I should be drinking. But when I do a lot of thinking, I don't know about you guys, but when I do a lot of thinking, I sometimes get a headache. Has anyone faced this? That because of stress or anything, right? You get carry discipline with you, right? If you feel, that it's going to be cold because it's about August, September, they have AC, correct? Make sure that you wear a jacket, correct? It's okay for you to take the jacket off, but better to go with the kind of, warm clothing. With regards to the other part, what they will provide you at the test center is the earplugs, right? According to me, the earplugs are more for psychology. It is not some kind of noise cancellation that you can't hear others. You will pretty much be able to hear if someone is creating a ruckus or talking loudly. There are some people who have this tendency to talk a little loud. If you are surrounded by someone who's creating that, it could be a little this. But a huge problem, and again, this was something that Manraj mentioned yesterday, was you are expected to wear the mask throughout the test. So Have you guys considered that? Okay, so I know it sounds a little weird, but if you are taking a practice test, my suggestion is to wear a mask. By the way, guys, this is just a gentle thing. Please pick all panelists and attendees and do not ask me questions in the chat window. For those who came in late, please put it in the Q&A box. I'll be taking it from the Q&A box, and I've already answered some questions. So I'm not going to be going back and answering whether AWA is included in online and all that. I've already answered that, so I won't be taking questions. This recording is available. Please go back and you can watch it from the start in case you missed any part, correct? So make sure that you get the mask part also figured out. Do not, and this is a very, very important thing, no matter what happens, will you all make a promise? Will you not check your mobile during the break? I have had at least 2 instances of my students who actually who ended up making calls. Okay, so I'll tell you something very crazy, right? So one student, what happened is during the break, he actually checked his phone. His phone was on, like he had put it on airplane mode. Then he just turned on just to see, like you have this FOMO, right? Ki, what will happen if I don't check my phone? How many of you have not checked your phone for like a couple of hours and you get a little, anxious, right? So he started, so he saw some, he had not put it on airplane mode. He had put it on silent mode. So he got like a bunch of missed calls from a particular number. The mistake this guy did is he called that number to check what happened. It was an Amazon courier. That is really the fact. Okay, but because he called, his course were cancelled. Okay, so you cannot be, even watches like this, you cannot wear anything into the test centers. Some cases they have even asked people to remove jewelry if they feel it could be, I don't know how, but there have been cases where they have asked people to remove certain pieces of jewelry. So please go minimally, having minimal accessories, correct? And please do not check your phone, very important. Once you take the test, I think I've gone through this, make sure that you have enough scratch paper with you. If you feel that you are running out of scratch paper before you end, please raise your hand. You just need to keep your hand raised, so you can keep one hand raised and you can be solving. The proctor or anyone in the test center will come and they will ensure that the scratch paper is provided to you, right? So that's on the before and during the test. What do you need to do after the test? Okay, first things first is you will be, okay, just before I get there, one more question that I have is, with regards to the test center itself. So make sure that whatever test center that you are going for, try to see if you are able to find some kind of online reviews for the test center. So if especially within a city, you have 2 or 3 test centers, it is not necessary that you always go to the one that is closest to your house. I would typically pick the one that has been there for some time, where there is some amount of reviews, because they tend to be more experienced. You have to understand all of these Pearson test centers are franchisees, right? So you can pay money, you can have a franchisee. They know how to follow the protocol, but the experienced ones will be able to help you better. Now, coming to what happens after the test, once you kind of complete the test, you essentially see your GMAT score. So when you see your GMAT score, you have 2 options. You accept that score or you cancel that score. In the case you cancel the score, you can reinstate the score after you go back. In case you accept the score, you can always cancel it after going back. So my take would be, don't worry too much. In your mind, keep a mental cutoff. If you see something disastrous, like for example, if you feel you completely tanked the test for whatever reasons, I hope it doesn't happen. But in case something, yes, cancel. But if not, if let's say you're expecting 740 and you see 710, my suggestion is not to cancel, though it may not be your best performance. It is always good to walk away with at least one good score, so that later on you can always go ahead and do this cancellation bit. B school selection. Okay, two more points over here. B school selection. Lot of people stress what schools to pick. Don't worry, you can always go ahead and apply to as many schools as you want. If you're taking the GMAT online test, this is something that is given complimentary. You can apply to schools. If you're taking it at the test center, there are up to 5 schools that you can pick before the test starts, correct? So best for you to write down the name of the schools. You don't need to remember the code. When you go there, you just select the drop down. It will show you what program. So, but just remember that these are the 4 or 5 programs. Last thing you want to do is, you know, waste your mental energy sitting on the test thinking, "Arey, should I pick this? Instead, yeah, I pick this." Don't do that. Okay, go with 5. It's okay. Tomorrow you can always add more schools to it. I'm just trying to think in terms of the coverage, this thing. So pretty much, I just wanted to talk about the cancellation bit. So let me do this before I get there. Just wanted to let you know, in case you are interested, those of you who are taking your GMAT in the next few days, do let us know how your GMAT goes, and you can write into us. You can have someone in our team, an expert. So maybe Rachel, if you can just share the link over here, please. So you can schedule a call with one of our experts. And so technically you cannot retake the GMAT online test. Again, a request, please put it in the Q&A box. Don't put it in the chat window. Okay, I'll take it from the Q&A box, but since I saw this question, let me just answer it straight off the bat. You can't retake it if you're taking the GMAT online test, but GMAT will accept on a case-to-case basis if you want to take the GMAT. Okay, so if you are a CrackVerbal student, please get in touch with us. We work very closely with GMAT. So you know, we have we will reach out to our contacts in GMAT and we can help you with that thing, right? You also, those of you who are not CrackVerbal students, we have 2 variations. We have our GMAT live program. Many of you are part of that, where I come in and teach over the weekends. You also have an on-demand program where you have recorded videos, where you have recorded questions, and if you are, if you want to do it in a slightly faster pace, and you want more flexibility, then the on-demand courses for you. Again, Rachel, thank you for providing the links. So you can just click on the links and get to know more about the programs. So I'm just going to be taking the Q&A. So let me just take, I see there is a bunch of questions I have. So first question, what is the usual last date for registering for the GMAT test? See, what happens with the GMAT test is you will get dates right now because of COVID. You could also find that we have had students where the GMAT test centers have actually shut down and the dates have been postponed. But anyways, if you go online on mba.com, you will find 2 types of dates. Anyone who's tried searching for GMAT dates, tell me if whatever I'm saying, did it happen to you, that you find dates that are far off in the future, like you'll get something like 2 months later, or you'll get something 2 days later. Did you notice that it is always like 2 variations, right? You never get something which is like a nice, like 1 month later or 3 weeks later. Can you tell me why this happens? Any idea why this should happen? Why do you get things which are typically a week into the from the day you're looking at the test? Why do you find more availability? People cancel at the last moment, correct. So again, Abhinav, this is for everyone. Again, you see people picking all panelists and attendees, but let me just not worry about it now. We anyways have just a couple of minutes left. People cancel in the last moment, right? Which is why you get the dates available. My suggestion is go to mba.com. Please make sure you at least create your profile. Make sure you register. You can always select the date a little later. Okay. What is the likeliness of GMAT to provide an option? Sairam, I'm not very sure. It's a very hypothetical question. What are the chances? I don't know. Why do we want to think about that option? Let us focus all our energy in taking the GMAT the first time and doing our best. So I wouldn't be, you know, can there be a bed and other stuff in my room when I take the online GMAT? Obviously, you can. In fact, I will tell you, please don't quote me on this, but I have had students who told me that technically, okay, please guys, don't take any inspiration from what I'm saying. Do not even try to cheat on the GMAT, because if you do get caught, and they have forensics, okay, they have testing forensics. What happens is that your GMAT footage, because your entire screen is getting captured, right, when you take it at online, uh, which by the way could be a distraction for some people. Okay, I've had some people tell me that, Arun, just that, you know, watching myself in that small window that I'm seeing a video of myself was very distracting. Like, I don't know why I kept checking myself, right? So you will be having that footage. So they will be looking at your eyeballs. They will see how long are you looking at the screen, because they expect that a guy who's not cheating is going to be looking at the screen most of the times, except for when he's looking down for the physical whiteboard. But I've had people tell me that, Arun, I had this big mural on my wall and I could have easily placed a camera that could have actually zoomed into my screen and captured everything, right? So remember, see, they are just trying to assess that, look, this guy will mostly not cheat, correct? If someone wants to really hack, maybe you know, there is a way by which you can do that, but please, I would suggest not to do that. Having a bed, having other things is perfectly okay. Like right now, if you see in my room, I have got a bunch of things. I don't think I can just remove it because it's the day of the GMAT, right? If you are applying next year, don't know what schools, go ahead, pick randomly what 5 schools you think are best for you. Really, it's anybody's guess. But eventually, once you get the GMAT score, once you have made a decision where to apply, you go to mba.com. You can always give the extra schools you can pick from the option. Akanksha, there are schools that do not allow sending scores later, will accept we send. No, no, no. Any school, see, schools are not bothered. See, schools are not bothered whether you are sending them that day, what day. See, GMAT is making money. I have to explain this to you. If you go to a school, okay, and you say I have scored 750, how will the school believe you? Correct? School will say, get me proof. You will now give them a scorecard. They will say, a scorecard can be forged. So what MBA.com does is it goes to schools and they basically partner with schools and they say, hey, I will give you, if this guy gives you his name and, you know, whatever ID, I will give you access. I will show you his scores. Correct? So that's where the official score report works. Otherwise, for schools to give you admission, they can pretty much believe whatever you are submitted in your application form. Correct? So don't, you know, worry. Again, I got another question. Can you retake? Currently, you cannot retake the GMAT online. Guys, I hope you are clear on this. I don't want to say that we can violate the protocol because you know, we will talk to GMAT and we'll give you backdoor entry. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you have a genuine case where you took the GMAT online test and you feel you want to reappear, I'm just saying that such a option would be possible for you. Is it possible to take the GMAT second time without cancelling? You can take GMAT 8 times, right? That is the lifetime limit of the GMAT. You can take it 8 times. You don't need to cancel any scores. All 8 scores will be visible to the GMAT, so you don't need to worry. Yeah. Dharmesh, today's intention is not to get into specific problems. My suggestion, all CrackVerbal students, you know how to contact prep. You heard Mandraj say this yesterday also. He had a session with Srilina, not to be confused with Shrikala, with Srilina, with Arvind. So if you want to get in access with the tutors, if you have taken a mock test, if you want to analyze your performance, if you want to have a session where you're working with someone one-on-one, please make sure you write to us. And if we feel that you have reached that, you know, let's say a few days before the test, you know, you need some kind of an analysis, we will definitely help you out on that. Okay. How many days does it take for your GMAT online scores to come? I would say roughly about a week. I think on paper they have published some number. I don't remember exactly. They have said 10 days or 2 weeks, but most students have found it in about 5 days. So the reason they take those 5 days is I told you about the forensics. So they run the forensics. They actually do that analysis and scrutiny before they let you kind of go with your GMAT score. I have the last few questions, so I'll just kind of go through it. What happens if there is a network problem in the middle of your GMAT online test? No problem. When your power comes back, or when you go online, technically they have I don't know anybody who works in product, works in coding. There is a term for it. I don't know what it is, but there is no loss, right? Like you will be able to pick from the point that you left off. For example, you are on question number 8. You will go back to question number 8. There is a technical term for it, but that's what will happen. So you don't need to worry. Everything will go off, and you'll have to start from scratch. Not true. Correct. In case you are taking GMAT at the test center, can I give some slack on the AWS since there is no option of AWS in the online GMAT? I would say, why risk? Why risk? Anyways, if you're going to start with quant or verbal, AWS is going to come to the end. Go with a template, prepare one day, take a bunch of essays. You can always, by the way, write into us, at CrackVerbal if you're a student. If you want us to look at your AWS essays, we can even give feedback. But my suggestion, please don't risk not taking the AWS. If you have not decided the school, perfect. 90% of people who take the GMAT have not decided on the schools, right? I think the bigger problem is GMAT itself is playing game theory. Would you agree? What is the harm? You should ask people to pick the schools, 2 hours later. No, what will happen in 2 hours? Have you ever noticed, like, why are they asking it before the test starts? Because before the test, so we are like full of confidence. We'll say Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, safety school, ISB, right? And then you bomb the test, you go back and like, shit, man, I don't know what I was thinking. So it's weird, right? But I would personally, I think, that's just a way the GMAT is doing. Akshay, rescheduling cannot be done at the test center. They are just administering it. Everything has to be online. So make sure that you go online and do that. Can we write anything on the note sheet provided while browsing through the screens? 2 minutes reading through the instructions. Technically, you can write the ABCDE part, but you can start writing only after the test starts. While you are going through the initial screens, you are expected to be looking and not writing. Okay. Is it true that there is more chance of getting selected in the first or second round? So Ishani, this is a question more in terms of MBA applications. We'll be having a session on that shortly. We will discuss the things over there. Right now, as a general rule, I would say, just make sure that, don't worry about all of that is what I would say, right? Focus on the GMAT, right? So, because a question saying that whether you're R1 or R2, take the GMAT as early as possible. If you are telling me that Arun, I'll score 650 and I can apply in R1, and R2 I can score 760, then apply in R2. I'm just giving you a hypothetical scenario that you have to apply in the round that you are best prepared, correct? So you are the best choice. Yes, all things being equal, applying in R1 has a slight advantage, which is you have a backup, which is R2. Correct? But if you end up having R2 as the only round that you're applying, then you don't have a backup. Having said that, here is one important thing that I also want you to kind of consider, which is this year, 2020-21 admission cycle, please expect, especially for Indian schools like ISB, expect the rounds to be completely different. Okay? The rounds are not going to look anywhere close to what it was. I'm pretty certain that your last round is not going to be January 1st. You will have a date after that also. Okay. But again, till the point we have clarity, we don't know. Okay. Should I cancel if I get a IR 2 or 3? Okay. So here is the funny thing. If you get a IR 2 or 3, my suggestion is not to cancel it. I had a student, Apurv, he scored 760. He got a IR1. Okay, he eventually went to IIM Ahmedabad PGPX. So yes, he had to address it in his optional essay. Correct. So he had to write that extra thing. Why his IR was so low? He was a repeat taker. He had taken the GMAT earlier. He did not cancel those scores. So he said, in my earlier attempt, as you can see, I've scored a 6 or whatever he scored, but this time I had a problem. So you can explain it, but don't cancel the score if you have scored high. What can be the final GMAT date to take for somebody? See, there is no thing like a final GMAT date. But again, as I said, round 1, round 2, not within the scope of what we are discussing. This session is meant for people planning to take the GMAT, how to prepare yourself for the day of the test. I'm going to take the last question. We are roughly at 9 o'clock. So we have been at it for about 90 minutes, which means I've been speaking for 90 minutes without stopping, without, this. So we will be kind of concluding. Last question, what can I do in terms of preparation 2 weeks before the question? So before the exam, great question, Himanshu. Do not pick anything new. Do not just solve new concepts. Along with solving some new questions, also go back to the previous questions you have done, try to analyze, try to see how best you could learn, try to put yourself in a positive frame of mind. Best 1 week before the GMAT, we have a lot of testimonials on the CrackVerbal website. We have a lot of videos where students who have done well have come and spoken. I think many of you who were yesterday in Manraj's session realized that, did you feel inspired hearing to someone who was actually in the same shoes but was managed to crack a good score? Right? So putting yourself in a positive frame of mind, thinking about the GMAT, according to me, is a lot, better way for you to utilize your time. All right. Thank you so much, guys. I'm also going to be, as promised, I'm also going to be giving you a PDF. So Rachel, if you could just go ahead and share the PDF. So this is a checklist of all the things that you probably need to remember on the day of the test. So just go ahead and, you can just download it and just keep it as a ready reckoner. So whatever I've discussed today, as far as the GMAT test is concerned, is all contained in this PDF. Again, as I said, it's more of a checklist. I'm giving you a bunch of things, most of which we have discussed. Make sure you connect with us in case you are already a CrackVerbal student, you are already connected with us. If not, these are the ways in which you can connect. Just basically you can stay in touch, because we produce a lot of content. Our YouTube channel also has a lot of content that we keep updating, right? So that's all I had, guys. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for your patience. I hope you enjoyed today's session. I hope you got to learn, and all the best for your GMAT sessions. And thank you so much. All right. Bye-bye. Thanks.